welcome back to PLA Backstage Pass. I have with me today Erin. Erin, not just joined our company. You've been here for how long?
Oh gosh, 8 months.
Has it been 8 months?
I think it's been like 8 months, maybe
no
longer.
No way.
Yeah, since September.
Oh, but you just moved to Reno, like recently.
Just moved to Reno, yeah.
Yeah, but Erin secretly has been with us for a while before we announce Erin.
Yeah.
And Erin is our compliance specialist. She also does all of the product development for PLA. I know Erin has had an interview with Tress before talking about the Limitless line, but I'm going to do a pretty raw podcast with Erin where I'll ask all the things. Just share everything. I did not tell her what I was going to ask her.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of nervous because you always ask like the questions that I'm like, I need to prepare for that.
She's like going over my NDA real quick to make sure what can I answer.
Yeah, I'm like sweating. As we were sitting down, I was like, guys, I'm sweating.
Don't sweat. And then we, of course, had Mr. Maverick. Mr. Maverick is Erin's little baby, and he's joining us for the podcast today. I've never wanted to have a dog until I met Maverick, and I'm like, maybe I want to have a dog. But then I know if I have a dog, it'll probably be like an obnoxious dog. So
you just get to be the auntie and babysit.
Oh, that's true. Hey, you said that. Okay.
I know. She's been telling me for so long that she wants to babysit him when I go places, and I keep saying no. I'm scared.
You scared?
I'm scared. What if he has an accident in your beautiful home or something? I don't know.
You have not been to my house. I have 2 children, 8 and 10. They're like monsters. I have sticky notes on the ceiling of my bedroom. Don't ask me how they get there. I have no idea. One day we got home and my children have probably 200 sticky note that has pictures of cats that they draw, and they just say mail. And then say the location of where they put them, like one on the toilet, one in the bathroom, and one in the ceiling, all the way up high. So we got haunted by sticky notes for 2 weeks.
You know what we found? I haven't told you, but we found when we were cleaning out the warehouse last week, we found a really old picture that Paris drew when she was probably so little.
Yeah.
You could tell, the age. And so that's in the sample stuff. I need to give that to you.
Yeah, no.
She was writing thank you notes to people.
Oh, yeah. No, really sweet. Maverick can't scare me. I live with 2 children. A little crazy. So, Erin, how is it going so far at PLA?
I love PLA. I love being here.
You don't have to say that.
It's okay. No, I hate it, actually. I hate being here. I hate it. No, I do. I genuinely love it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you. I would tell you if I felt differently about it. Being at PLA has been really, really healing for me in a lot of areas that I didn't know that I needed to have healed.
But it must be so different, right? You going from being a solo lash artist and, running your own salon, and then to running your salon and then lashing full time and teaching a ton of people, speaking all over America, to now kind of working in a cubicle 9 to 5.
Not kind of, literally.
Yeah, literally. How's that going?
It's great. It's new. It's challenging.
She hates it.
It's going great. I don't hate it because I will say I'm so anybody that doesn't understand or know my position with PLA, I'm kind of in between. I hold roles in 3 different departments in PLA. So I'm the product developer. I'm also doing global compliance. I'm also a part of the marketing team.
Yeah.
So I'm bouncing around between 3 different areas at any given time at HQ. So I'm at my desk a lot, but I'm also in between conference rooms, or, I'm in a meeting room somewhere, I'm in the studio recording, or I'm in my sample room. Wherever I am, I'm not always sitting in the same spot. And, we travel for conferences and I'm going back and forth. I leave for lunch. And so I have a change of scenery, but going from being your own boss and, owning a studio and owning a couple businesses in Salem and being self-employed to going back to being a W-2, that's challenging.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Me and Erin, we do one-on-one every week where we sit down and talk about what we're working on and what our challenges is. And often when you see things on social media, everything's like good, great, perfect, and beautiful, right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, the behind the scenes is more like raw, messy, and I joke with what Erin and Ashley just told Trust this morning. I said I feel like, because I've been in the lash industry for a long time, that nothing sort of surprises me anymore. But then owning PLA has been really humbling for me because I feel like I showed up at work every day, sort of think what I know to expect, but then I just play whack-a-mole like all day. Where I'm like, this happened today. And I'm like, okay.
Like putting out fires every day.
Yes, you put out fire every day, big or small. And then some you kind of like, well, that was new. That's a new one for me. But going, I imagine for you being a lash artist in education and really well known at what you do, to doing product development, though I know you did a little bit of product development before, and now going into a completely new field, which is compliance. That gotta be a little. It's like a whole career change.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, completely. Like my entire world flipped upside down. Not only did I move states, I became a W-2 again. I closed my businesses. Like I still have Monarch Lash Co. I still have my online courses, and I'm still teaching, and I'm teaching a class this weekend privately, and I'm still speaking as Erin as Monarch Lash Co. So it's not like MLC is completely gone, which I was really thankful coming to PLA that was something that I was allowed to do, which I think that a lot of people are surprised to hear that. I think that people, when they become a W-2 working for another company, they're like, oh, you sold your soul. Like your business is no longer, because now you're working for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I really felt like they complement each other, and I really appreciated that I was able to have both. But going from being self-employed for so many years, nearly a decade, to going back to being W-2, that challenged me in ways that I didn't know that I was going to end up feeling challenged, although it's been really good. And I feel like any other company, I wouldn't have done that for.
Tell me about the challenge. Like what surprises you the most?
Surprises me the most?
HR will recommend HR not to listen to this podcast, so let it rip.
Close your ears. I wouldn't say surprise. Okay, what surprises me the most about PLA, being a W-2 for PLA than being a W-2 for anybody else, is how lax everything is here, and that in a way, you're not going to be in trouble for as much as you think that you're going to be in trouble for.
Say that again louder, Erin. Say that again.
I know, because I need to convince myself of that. I need to learn that myself still. But that has been really, how do I even say this? Because it's going to get deep real quick if I really dive into this. Like, healing trauma is a big deal, but like, when you're so worried about, it's a trust game. It's a trust fall. Cause I'm like, well, what if they get mad at me? I just moved states. I just closed my businesses. And then what if I get in trouble? What if I get fired? What if anything like that were to happen? Like, oh,
hi.
Intermission. Hold on.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to be there instead of here. So that is a challenge mentally. It's a mental hurdle to not have the autonomy that you always had prior. When you're working for yourself, you have complete creative control, you have complete time control, you have schedule control. You don't have to request PTO if you were going to go anywhere. You can just, go wherever you're going to go. And coming here and learning how to trust that you can have both. I've never had an employer in that role where I do have autonomy still, and I do have a say in my day to day, and being able to have a say in things. And
I kind of want to say maybe it was just the experience you had in the past, but that's kind of common though. Like, right? Like if you go work for a company. I mean, I've never worked W-2 for a different company. I've always worked for myself, and then now I work at PLA. But I don't think we've ever had people come in and ask for days off or PTO, and we'll be like, nope, you can't do that. Matea, did that ever have happened? Have that ever happened? I don't think so. No. I think that's pretty normal. I mean, it's just a matter of being prepared.
But only having a certain amount of PTO. You know,
Yeah,
like that's that's new.
Yeah.
Going from being your own boss and being able to just leave whenever you want to, that's so different.
But I have to say though, when I was a lash artist, I worked 6 days a week.
I never took days off.
And then I never took days off.
Never did.
You ever heard people say like in some of the big corporate company or, you know, some company that they have like unlimited PTO, and they said unlimited PTO is such a scam because you can take unlimited days off as long as you do your job without anyone else covering for you kind of thing. So then, you know, it's not really a PTO day because then you work extra hard before you leave and then you work extra hard when you come back, and then you don't really have anyone cover for you, and then you feel so scared that you don't take PTO day. But I say working now W-2, because I also work W-2 for PLA, my own PLA, but I get a paycheck and W-2 just like everyone else. I say I take more days off now than I have ever done in my lash artist life, because now I don't work Saturday and Sunday, and then
that's true.
You know?
That is true. Having designated days a week. Never. Okay, when I was a lash artist, full transparency, my clients were encouraging me to take days off. Oh yeah. Like they were encouraging. They were like, dude,
you're like, girl, you
need to take
it.
a trip. Yeah, they were like encourage, and I didn't really know whether to take that as like a compliment of like, thank you so much, I serve you so well, you love me so much, well back, or if they're like, girl, you're burnt out and we hate you, like you need to take a break,
or like, hey, you know, like put some makeup on. Are you okay? Yeah. Like, are you feeling all right?
Like you're sick. You need a break.
Like, don't show up here all grumpy. But no, I think I have way more freedom when I was such a people pleaser and such a doormat that like people would be like, hey, I need a lash fill and I need to come in at like 7:30 at night. And I'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll come in at 7:30 at night. Or I just talk to Tuss, and I know like some day Tuss lash until like 10 o'clock at night.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No. Yeah.
I've gone in as early as 4:30 in the morning to do a fill on my clients before. Yeah.
Okay, I was never that people pleaser.
Yeah, no, I was a doormat. No. Like I
literally I did not struggle with that. In the earlier in my career, I wouldn't say I was doing it out of a people pleaser mentality. It was because I was trying to build my book. So I had to be less picky, right? So at that point, I was just like, you need 10 p.m. to get your lashes done? Great. I was doing lashes in between whenever I could fit them in. And oftentimes I was taking clients at 1 a.m.
Yeah, that's
at
crazy.
Earlier in my career, the earliest in my career, because I worked from 9 to 9, and so I wouldn't get home until 9:30, and then my first client would be at 10 p.m. And then I would work until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. because I was like a slower lash artist.
Regular lash artist schedule though, like I work 9 to 9. I'm like nobody in corporate world work 9 to 9.
No, that was my 9 to 5 job while I was a beginner lash artist trying to build my books. Yeah, don't recommend doing that, guys. No, I don't. I was so tired. I was not okay mentally.
I have to say this, and I think it's true to like a few people, not all people that quit and work for lash brand, that this is true, but I think for a lot of people, they quit because they get so burned out from lashing, 5, 6, 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. And not necessarily, a lot of people are like, oh my God, if you quit your job and then you go work for a big company, you must be making 3, 4, 5 more times that you're making as a lash artist, which is not necessarily always true.
Yeah.
But I think it's going into a different field where you have a little bit more stability, and then was more of like a sure thing with a little bit more benefit. Like I've never had benefits until like I work at PLA where, I had benefit through my husband's job. But before my husband had his state job, like, I didn't have any benefit, and I definitely had no 401k. So I feel like a lot of lash artists are kind of looking into switching when they've been lashing for like 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And they're like, maybe not for forever.
Yeah. I think that I can only speak for myself. I think a lot of people, especially now that the economy is changing, they are looking for more stability, certainly. Yeah. For me, I didn't hate lashing. How do I want to say that? I want to say that in a way of like, I didn't move up into a product development role because I hated lashing, or because I was so burnt out from lashes that I needed to find the next thing because I just couldn't do this anymore. Like I loved it so deeply and so much that I wanted more than just being behind the bed anymore.
Right.
I don't mean just being behind the bed as a negative thing. Like, you can certainly make a wonderful career doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And some people choose to do that for forever. And I admire that. I think that that's beautiful. Personally, my body was giving out after, nearly a decade of being a lash artist. My body, I have a permanent frozen shoulder, my neck. Don't even get me started. I could go down the laundry list of injury that's a long time to rehab and to fix, as well as I gained an allergy. So I gained an allergy to adhesive after lashing for so long without a mask. And it's been a long time trying to figure out what was going on, but my respiratory system really wasn't cooperating with me anymore. And so every day I was struggling in more ways than just being behind the bed, but my love for it was still so there. But I also wanted to serve more people. And, being an educator and being a lash artist, I knew that I could help more people with my mind and help more people with across the industry to advance the industry and serve more people than who I was able to reach just doing, my small clientele, or it didn't feel small at the time. But
I have to say though, when we look for people that do product development, a lot of time you bring in product people that have experience doing product development, and not necessarily a lash artist, right? Like they come in maybe from like a chemist background, or maybe they have buying and sourcing experience, and maybe they have a little bit of understanding in the beauty industry. Like I've worked with brands that brought in product, like head of product development that have experience in product development, but not necessarily eyelashes. For PLA, I think the reason why you were the perfect fit for the position is because you are an exceptional, like, good lash artist.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think if you have a background in being a lash artist and see all the pain points of being a lash artist and look at products and have an intimate relationship with like, hey, I know this and I think if I do this, it would be better. I think that's the kind of product development that we want, because we really serve lash artists. Like I'm a lash artist, and if the product doesn't really make sense for a lash artist to carry, why would we make them? And I certainly see a lot of products that I see on the market where I'm like, I don't know if that's a trend or if that's going to actually really help. But I think because I'm a lash artist, you're a lash artist, Loretta's a lash artist. So the core of our product development really helped to serve or develop things that we think lash artists would love. Often I hear companies say like, I think this would sell well. And at PLA, it's more like, I think lash artists would love this. The Limitless lines is an example of that, where we talk about, hey, what do lash artists struggle with and how do we combat that? So I think that's why you are the perfect person for the positions.
Thank you.
Not just that you love product development, but at the core, you have all the knowledge and experience of the lash industry.
Yeah. The reach, even though I'm behind the scenes a lot more. Like you said, I'm working in a cubicle a lot more. Like I'm a lot more behind the scenes day to day than I was prior. But now the work that I'm doing and the work that PLA is working on doing together. So he's like, okay, he moves an inch and he's back down. The work that PLA, though, and our efforts reach hundreds of thousands of people. It changes the entire industry. Like the ProMade 2.0, for example. I wasn't here when that launched, but one small innovation can literally change the entire industry. It changes the way that every brand starts looking at their products. It changes the way that lash artists are creating their artistry and serving their clients. And so the way that I look at it is being able to serve so many more lash artists, even though I'm more behind the scenes, that felt so much more fulfilling and purposeful to me. So yes, I am taking that step back in a way from being more in the forefront of being on stages as much or talk whatever I'm doing, lashing as much, but it's affecting so many more lives. And to me, that served my purpose more. That felt so much more aligned.
I have to say though, with your friends or your community knowing you for like Mona Lash Co. and know Erin and see Erin at like trade shows and stuff like that, and then you come to PLA and work product development, and and obviously with product development, all, like, if she knows where all the bodies are buried, and she know where a whole entire vendor list, all of the lab that we work with, and all of this stuff. I would probably say she bear more secrets than most people in the company does, which obviously come with a hefty NDA and all of the informations that you are entrusted with. Do you ever have people comes and it's like, hey, Erin?
No.
In a curious way, not in like the malicious way, but in like a curious way.
I've never been approached in a way of like, hey, can I have their manufacturer? Like, what are all of the secrets? Like, I've never been directly approached in that way. And I think if anyone did, a bat might come out of my backpack. Like, there's no way in hell that I think that would just be a show of character to me if someone actually chose to do that. But people are very curious, and definitely they want to know what I'm doing. They want to know my day job, and going from this is a big transition, and they do know me. And so they're like, first of all, this is a perfect role for you. So what are you doing? And what are you working on? And what are all the fun things that PLA is going to be coming out with? Because you're so open and transparent, and that's one of the core pillars of PLA is how transparent we are.
I have a big mouth. It's the loosely translated version of that. Sometimes I say things and marketing's are like,
marketing's like, okay, that was for next week, but apparently it's on this week's
we didn't
agenda.
Supposed to say that, Michelle. And I'm like, sorry, oops. But but people must be curious.
They're very curious, and because PLA is so transparent and we are leading innovation, they're like, holy shit, the minds that are at PLA, like, what's coming next? I just have to know, Yeah, people do ask. And it's, for the most part, my experience has been very respectful and has been actually really wonderful. And I'll tell people when I can't tell them something. So I never fault anybody for asking. I don't think that I'm the most nosy girl that you'll ever meet. So asking a question is never offensive to me unless there's a malicious intent behind it. Yeah. And I will not answer you.
Yeah. But I think in our industry, right, there's start, I would say for the last 2 years or so, we start seeing a lot of innovations that's coming out. A lot of brands actually take this serious and start going like, hey, let's make this, let's make that. I think majority of brand, from what I understand, product development really is kind of just limit to, hey, let's get a bunch of samples, test them out between like 5 or 6 lash artists, right? And then see like how they would like certain products. But you and Loretta are sort of testing kind of crazy, especially adhesive.
We're kind of nuts.
Yeah, because sometimes they'll tell me like a whole entire perimeter of testing, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, and I was just like, whoa, that's a little bit extreme. We just kind of tell
you afterwards. We're like, so we've already gone through all of these steps, and this is just the result. And you're like, okay, I didn't know you were doing that.
No, I love that, because I think, Loretta, she's been a consultant for years, and one of the reasons why I love her is she takes things to the extreme, right? Yeah. And then when it combines to your personality, which is genius and a little paranoid, I may say.
I'm so paranoid.
Yeah,
I also am really OCD. So I think about just the tiniest nano details of literally anything. Almost pessimistic. I was explaining this on Tressa's podcast. I'm a very pessimistic consumer. So like if I look at something on the shelf when I'm shopping and I can find something wrong with it, like I'm intentionally trying to find something wrong with it, because then I know that there's improvements that get to be made.
Customer.
I am totally that customer. Don't take me to a grocery store. Especially now that Loretta's taught me global compliance and labels.
You read everything.
I read everything now, and I can tell you, like, this product, this brand, this anything is not in compliance anymore. And so now I'm just going through the grocery store having fun with it. But and my brain's a vault. But it ends up because of that, I know where the improvements get to be. And that's why Loretta and I do take the steps that we do, is because we want the products to be so well thought out and so intentional that if we can find a crack in it and we can find an issue with it before it even launches, then we can fix it and we can improve it before it gets launched. And then we know that it is the best that it can be on the market at that point. Evolution will always happen with any product, but if you can find an immediate issue with it, before it even launches, we're not going to launch it.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy because we talked about product development, right? A lot of brand, product development, they take products and test them. They're like, I like this, I don't like this. I may make minor adjustment to this because we also white label and private label. So sometimes our customer would come back and say, can you tweak this a little bit and that a little bit? And I consider that product development, big or small.
Yep.
But let's talk about globally compliance, which take a chunk of your work, which I don't think any brand... Do you know any brand in the state that do globally compliance?
I don't know any brand that has someone in-house for global compliance. I think that I can tell from some labels. If anybody doesn't know who Loretta is, by the way, she's a toxicology chemist of 40 years, and her brain is a computer.
Yes.
And a computer. I could not respect that woman more. I love her so much.
Sometimes she remind me of a comment that she's read like 5 years ago. And she'll find me a screenshot for it. And I'm like, woman, that's one woman you don't want to wrong.
No. She remembers everything too. Like I'll say, I've said something to her like 8 months ago. And she's like, oh, remember that one time that you made this 3-word comment at me? I'm like, no, but you do.
She does. Okay. She has a photographic memory.
Absolutely.
So does her daughter. Yeah. So does her daughter. I think she's a doctor.
Yeah, she's a surgeon. Her daughter's Makes a surgeon. Sense. Yeah, one of her daughters is a surgeon, and one of them is working in banking and accountants and numbers. So, and she's over in Germany. So anyway, working with Loretta has been the funnest thing for me, and I don't think that a lot of people know that my brain works kind of like that. I am not a chemist.
Globally compliance is not fun.
It is not. It is fun. I enjoy I enjoy parts of it. Parts of it have been really challenging, but once you learn it, it's really fun to me. But I used to read case study. Like I used to read case law because I just wanted to understand. Like I would read law consistently because I wanted to understand our industry and I wanted to understand like this is what was required of our industry.
Oh my God. It just dawned on me. I think I need to recruit you to help me read patents.
Oh, I would love it.
Oh my God.
Let's do it.
So like in our company, like our attorney would write the patents, or I come up with an idea and then they write it, and then they'll come back with like a 67 pages. For example, I read early this week, and English is not my first language, and I have no experience in patents. So usually when I read a patent, I have to read it like 4 to 5 times, like in details, for me to understand everything of it. I bet you would be great at it.
So apparently, guys, I am in 4 departments now.
So I'll buy like Chinese food. We'll come over. We'll hang out with Maverick,
it's and perfect. Then we'll read case law.
We'll read
perfect.
It's crazy. That's what I've spent a lot of my time. I say like the last year for since TAT launches, and to read patents, to learn patents, because we file a bunch of patents ourselves, and OPT has patent on manufacturing, and just want to make sure that we operate right and and patent the ideas that we have. But that's what I would say I struggle the most with, because I don't really have anyone like that at TAT to like help me read through patents. That's okay. Moving on.
Globally compliant.
Patents partner in crimes.
Global compliance is, if anybody doesn't understand what that is, every single product that is in the market, whether it's imported, exported, any consumer product, no matter what it is, like this Celsius right now, or anything, not my dog. I was like, this thing, anything that I have in front of me, the FDA oversees it. So the FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. So they oversee cosmetics, they oversee food, and they oversee medical, anything. So any product that is in the lash industry, because it's deemed cosmetic, is going to be overseen by the FDA.
So our adhesive
is different. Adhesive is not FDA. It's not a cosmetic.
Gotcha.
Adhesive is different. Adhesive will never be globally compliant, and it will never be FDA approved because it has certain ingredients in it that are restricted or you're not supposed to be using it.
Right, because you're not consuming it.
You're not consuming it.
Gotcha. So for globally compliance, you make sure all the labels are correct, all the ingredients are good. You look through and make sure all the packaging is good. We sell it international. And then a good part of it is you guys go through the list of all of the ingredients before we decided to test anything and go, is this in general good for your health or bad for your health?
Yeah.
Or is this because I remember there was a nail product that I really, really loved. We brought it in and, while we were testing we were testing it in like me, and Tiger, he was testing it with like his small group of tester. Mm-hmm. And then you guys looked through globally compliance, looked through the ingredient list, and then they came back and they said, absolutely not. So then, it's incredibly
layered, globally compliant. So I think a lot of people see globally compliance as just the FDA, and the FDA is just America. So when we're talking about compliance for the United States versus globally compliant, every country or union has a different agency that oversees the products. They oversee ingredients, and every country has a different regulatory agency and regulatory requirements for their products, whether it's certain ingredients are restricted or banned up to a certain percentage, or, this ingredient in America is allowed up to a larger percentage versus you take it to Germany or you take it to the UK, you take it to EU, anywhere. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
So we're looking at every product that we bring in, not only from, is it allowed in the USA? Is it global? And is it allowed to be a global product? Because we want all of our products at PLA to be the healthiest. Like, we want it to be not just compliant for the sake of it passing a label. We want it to be compliant because there's a reason that those exist. There's a reason that those limits and requirements exist. We want it to be the highest quality and the healthiest, which a lot of people don't know about PLA, is how much we actually put into making sure that our products are safety tested.
But I feel like that's a must-have, though. Like, when you
would
do
think
products especially if you put it on people's eyes, right? I mean, I know Loretta always, oftentimes I'm like, I heard this adhesive is performing really, really well. Would you look into it for me? And she'll look in the ingredient list and she'll come back. She's like, under no circumstances we are going to carry that. And it's a little crazy where she can almost track down the manufacturers of almost anything there is in the world. It's a little scary. And now Erin is starting to do that, which is kind of terrifying for me. But I think most lash artists, I mean, let's name it on our fingers, right? There's Tress, there's me, there's you, there's Lana. That's 4 out of 7 lash artists that work at PLA had some kind of issue with, adhesive or breathing problem or very sensitive with them. And I think it's just because of very, very, very long-term exposure with no mask, because we were just raw dog it, just lashing, 2 inches away from adhesive for 10, 12 hours a day, all the days a week. So I think
low quality products.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I used to lash with, glue I bought on Amazon, not from reputable brand. Not gonna say who it is, but
super glue.
Where I was just like, holy crap, this is bad. So I think more than ever, product development and globally compliance, or at least purity testing, is so important to make sure that you know. And how do you know if the percentage of purity testing your adhesive is? You can always ask the company. Most company, like our company, we do purity testing on all of our adhesive, and then we'll be able to give you the report for it. You can literally go and ask any company, and if they don't do one, if they haven't done one yet, they could probably look into doing one. It's not, I mean, it's expensive. It's not like insanely expensive, where it definitely pays off.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
for sure. It's worth it. Safety reports and getting testing done is worth it. But it is an extra measure. It's not something that's immediately required that for a brand to just white label a product, slap a label on something because it worked during a sample and then they can sell it,
Oh, don't we know that?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I really have learned the most, is how deep the roots run with PLA's product development. And I've learned, I don't want to say too much, but I've learned so much that I have learned what to look for in the industry now, as far as ingredients go and labeling. And what's compliant, what's not compliant, and what's safe.
Yeah.
And what's not safe. And I appreciate knowing what I know with PLA's products because we can honestly back up that we have some of the safest products on the market.
Yeah. So a little bit take a turn from what you are doing now to and potentially patent reading to I'm always curious about this when someone who have worked with multiple different brands, who have had their hands on a lot of different products. I've asked Tress this question when she first thinking about coming to join PLA, and her answer shocked me. So I'm gonna ask you. Forget that we working at PLA for a moment.
Yeah.
When you come in as product development, globally compliance, or mostly product development, and come from the outside world and kind of, first got to PLA, what did you think about PLA's product? And did you look at a bunch of stuff like, I can do that better, this? Tell me. I'm dying to know.
Oh.
Be honest. I can take it. It's okay.
Okay. Guys, sitting next to the CEO, having this conversation.
But this is how we get better.
No, okay, it's true. It's true. No. Okay, I just want to offend you. PLA.
I don't think you could offend me more than what Tress did. Do you want to know what Tress said?
I know what she said.
We have not talked about this before. Tress Larson, the very first time I sat down I've met Tress in social settings, and I've took a class with her and things like that. But the first time she sat on my couch in my office in back in the financial building, I flew her in because I mainly want to convince her to come work with me. And then she sat on my couch after I talked about it, and I answer a bunch of her questions. I show her the warehouse and all this stuff. She was just like, I actually always thought that PLA's product was cheap. And I was just like, the hell? That's your impression of PLA? And she's like, I've never knew that you were doing all of this behind the scenes. And I didn't know that you were doing product development. I didn't know that you really love your people well, or you have a community. I just thought PLA product was kind of cheap. And I was just like, Tress, like, what do you mean? And then she was just like, I could make it look more expensive. And I'm like, great, let's do that.
Yeah.
But I love that. What do you really think?
No, I had the same impression. I have the same impression. I think part of it was because of how many discounts we did run or do run.
Yeah.
And so having a discount brand, I don't like that term, but having a discount brand, to me, I didn't know that wasn't what I was taught from a marketing perspective is the luxury brands, right? Because when have you seen Louis Vuitton ever run a sale?
No.
Hermes, any of these. So, from a marketing perspective and from taking the marketing courses that I have taken, to me, that was something that stood out to me, as well as the packaging and the products. I hadn't actually worked with PLA's products very much at all. I went to Tress's house at one point because we were doing something. We were doing a photo shoot. We were launching the podcast. We were doing something. And so I ended up flying to Arizona for a few days, and she had just started working for PLA. And she had all of this stuff out on her desk. She had a million tweezers. I guess you guys had sent her 50 tweezers at one point, and she had this whole cart of product. And I was like, I told you guys I'm nosy. So I was like, I just started, she was not even in the room. I just went into her office and I started playing with lashes and tweezers and just going through this stack of PLA products because I had never touched it before.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. All right. Actually, what surprised me and what I literally told Tress, I was like, why is every one of these tweezers working? Every one of these tweezers is working. Not only are they working well, but they're working the same. And I was picking up multiple of them and I was like, wait, I'm actually shocked. That was my first impression of PLA's product that I was touching, tweezers. I was like, wait, this is actually really consistent. Why do people think that this is so cheap? I thought it was so cheap too.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Mm-hmm.
So Paul and Tusney, the very first time that they came and visit PLA, because, we've talked to them about PLA, blah, 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 and they asked about our products, and they said, yeah, we hadn't tested all of our tweezers. And I can kind of just saw the look on Paul's face, but then, he kind of hit it really well. And then the first time he toured our warehouse in person, and then he saw like in the corner where Chu was just like testing tweezer and these like giant bucket of tweezers around him. And he turned to me, he's like, so you guys really test every single tweezers? And I looked at him like, you thought I was lying to you? But apparently he said, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Because I did. I thought that I didn't think you were lying, but I was like, okay, maybe like every other tweezer or maybe like every fourth or fifth tweezer. You're just kind of like, oh, that box is probably good.
Yeah.
Like,
So I thought that. I was like, Paul's just like a one-off, right? And I said, yes, we really did. And he's like, because I know a lot of brands say they do and they don't. And I have to tell you, I think at least 2 or 3 other brands owner had come, like, sometimes they go visit PLA and then they'll see like, Chu testing tweezer or Lana testing tweezers and they'll be like, what the hell, do you really test them? And I'm like, what is up with all people just think that we don't test our tweezers? Because we test every single one of them.
But it's a full-time job.
It is a full-time job. That's what Chu does most of the time. And I think he packs maybe 10% of the time if we're not like really down on tweezers. But we have I think we have like over 120 different tweezers SKU. That's because we have them in different designs and different colors. But I think we have mainly like about 20 tweezers. But every single tweezers that leave PLA building has been touched by Chu or Lana. Guarantee it doesn't leave without. So I thought people found that very strange because Paul was just like, there's no way. Like I was almost insulted when he told me that, and I was just like, but I told you it was.
We should make a video. We should show Chu testing tweezers one day because like his desk stresses me out. I remember the first day.
His desk stresses me.
Like tweezers, I feel like he's like I feel like he's just swimming in swords. It's like Lord of the Rings or like Game of Thrones on his desk every day. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, he tests a tons of them, and he also come back. Like sometimes he'll come back and he'll be like, hey, just so you know, something changed with the tweezers, whether it's the tensions or they changed the mold or things like that. That's how we got the feedback and come back and talk to our manufacturers to make tweezers, because obviously we don't make them ourselves at the PLA headquarters in Vietnam. But we have so much hands on the pulse of how our tweezers are made, and we really test them, because sometimes he'll come back and he'll be like, hey, I'm letting you know I got in 500 tweezers and I passed like 27 of them, and I'm like, like what? And he was just like, all of this and this is wrong, but then we'll be able to turn back to the manufacturers and say, hey, this changed. So I don't know why we got to tweezers, but
but the quality control that we have at PLA, and that was the first time that I had tried. That was one of my first impressions of PLA products.
Are cheap.
I did. I'm so sorry.
No. But I think because that's a good lesson for me to really communicate, why we are able to run a lot of the sales that we do. Because again, I think the first time we did a price slash for PLA at ProMate Lashes was because we were able to negotiate like a huge hair contract, raw material contract. So then when we bought like 2 years in advance, like hair material fiber for PLA, I was able to cut our loose ProMate prices down. And I feel like a lot of people that buy products from PLA, maybe they don't really know we actually manufactures them. Yep. So then I have a lot of, I have some wiggle room in terms of prices if our currency exchange rate change, because we pay in Vietnamese dollars. So like, how do I say this? If you owned a lash brand and you pay a company in Vietnam or China, money to make your lashes, they may say your lash tray cost $7. I'm going to throw a random number, $5, $7, or your tweezers cost $5, $7. You're always going to pay $5 or $7. At PLA is a little bit differently because we own our own manufacturers, and because the currency exchange fluctuates and it always goes up for Vietnam, when the dollar is worth so much more in Vietnam when the currency exchange go up. That means usually I can run a sale because I buy products for cheaper than what our dollar, really, like our dollar goes further.
Yep.
You ever hear people go like, oh, go to Japan because the yen is really low right now. It works the same, but it doesn't work the same for most brand owner because they just pay the dollars and then they don't get to pay the Vietnam dong, or they don't get to pay the won in Korea, or or the dollar or the money in China. They always pay our currency. So we actually run sales almost any time that we have an opportunity to, because I'm a lash artist. Lashing is expensive.
Well, yeah, and what I think that I've learned a lot about the manufacturing process since being at PLA, and obviously I have to be careful with what I talk about, but what I've also learned when it comes to prices, and a lot of brands, their profit margins are significantly less with their products, and they kind of end up sinking after a long time because they can't keep up with demand. A lot of times too, people don't realize that they're dealing with a broker in between their manufacturers, and because we own the manufacturer, we're going straight to the source, and so we're dealing with a broker is always going to take their cut. They're always going to upcharge. They're always going to make more on you. And then that ends up getting given to the brand owner that's paying for that product, but they don't realize that they're talking to a broker. Yeah. And a broker is, I don't know if everybody knows what a broker is, but like if you go on certain sites, they say that they're the manufacturer, but they're actually representing the manufacturer.
So I want to tell you the craziest broker story.
Okay.
Am I allowed it? I want to say it. We'll see.
Please keep that in there.
I'm I'll tell you this story. So one year I went to China because I was looking at some machinery and I was looking at some of this stuff. And I went on a trip of like Vietnam, China, Korea, and then came back to the state. And then I met up with this like big giant manufacturer. And they were very kind to me. Like they greeted me. They picked me up at the airport. They picked me up in like a really crazy, fancy, like the fanciest car I've ever been to. And I've been to in some fancy car, like flowers, all of this stuff, like the whole 9 yard.
You.
Oh yeah. Like the whole 9 yard. And then I, came back to the headquarters. It's massive, is beautiful, has like a couple hundred salespeople, just cubicles, like just imagine 200 cubicles, like up to cubicles. And I was just like, whoa, this is insane, right? And then I asked them to show me the manufacturers, and they said, yes, they'll show me the manufacturers. So they drove me to the manufacturers. I showed up at the manufacturers and I was in it for maybe 5 minutes. And then I walked out because I was so insulted. And then I was just like, so where do you really make your lashes? And they were just like, what you mean? And I was just like, please don't tell me that you make your lashes here. That's a little insulting. And it was just like, oh. And then I'm like, I own 5 manufacturers. I know what manufacturers look like. Please don't tell me that you have 200 salespeople and you have like all of this. And then there was like probably 22 people in their manufacturers, and it was all very lapped, like everyone has on a lab coat, and like it was weird.
Posed.
It was very staged. Yeah. That must be that stage manufacturer when they have guests. And I said, no, I don't want to see the stage. I know how lashes are being made. So maybe this worked for some people that don't, but like I want to see real manufacturers. I want to make sure.
But did you see lunch lady hats?
What?
If they weren't wearing their lunch lady hairnets, then it wasn't a real manufacturer.
No, I don't know. It was
wearing lab coats.
It was weird. It was just strange. And I know that's not how lashes are being made. Right. And it was just so uptight. And, they didn't really do their job all that well when I watched them closely. So I know it was a stage one. So anyway, so I asked them and they were just like, how do you know? And I said, I own 5 manufacturers. No manufacturers looks like this.
Yeah.
No real manufacturers look like this. And then I found out that sure, they don't own any manufacturers, and they partner with like 5 or 6 other different manufacturers, and they just kind of get products in as they go. So they are a massive trader and a very successful one. But they also have no quality control when they are trading with that many manufacturers, because they can't really take them back doing QC, get them on the same page, and then get them out. So I thought it was very interesting. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, it took me a long time to coordinate that trip. So I felt a little insulted because I was just like,
I bet.
yeah, I don't want to see this. I want to see real workers, and I want to see how the lashes are made and how QC and how everything, happened. So we didn't go into business with them because obviously can't.
Right.
And I was going to have them make a special line about easy fan lashes because we didn't really have the capacity to make the easy fan lashes at that time. And I was like, no, I can't do it. And they won't show me the real manufacturers. That's like, if they're not willing to show
Red
it
flag.
to me,
Yeah.
I know something is like weird, but yeah. Okay. So you do product development, you do compliance, you do marketing, content creating. Which one's the hardest?
Which one's the hardest? Well, that's challenging. I think it depends on the day and the task.
No, you have sort of two bosses. Who's meaner? just tell
No one's
them.
mean. No one's mean. No one's mean. In fact,
Who's stricter?
literally no one. That's why it's so hard to answer like what's actually wrong. Who's stricter? Is that a real question?
Yeah.
Stricter.
I think if people would ask, like, me and Jeff, who's stricter, they would probably say Jeff is.
For sure.
Yeah,
For
without
sure.
insulting him, Jeff is.
Yeah. I think that no one's strict though. I think that everyone just expects you to be an adult and do your job.
I love that. I love that.
I don't find it to be strict because I feel like when I think of the word strict, I think of like a little kid being scolded and like babysat. Yeah. So the word strict to me doesn't quite make sense. I think the person that probably you. Wait, who is it? Who is Loretta? Between you and Loretta?
Loretta and Chess.
No.
I'm not really your boss-ish.
I don't report. You are literally who I report to. What do you mean?
Yeah, but I don't like oversee the day-to-day compliance of your work. You work more with Loretta in that sense.
Yeah, and Loretta's not strict at all. No, she just expects me to do my job, and I do my job, and then that's how it goes. Yeah. But hard though, being the hardest role right now is compliance and is global compliance for sure. I think because I'm basically taking a crash course from a chemist. Not basic. I literally am taking a crash course from a chemist on learning an entirely new topic that is not common sense. And I don't fault brands for not knowing these things or not even knowing to ask about certain things because it's not something that you would know unless you know. And so I understand the complexity a little bit more and I respect it. And I think that learning the layers, especially because a lot of people don't understand that these regulatory requirements change consistently.
Yeah.
Percentages and certain ingredients is always changing and certain countries are allowing ingredients. Some countries don't. Some countries are now changing the percentage that's allowed on the same ingredient that they've allowed for the last 500 years to be in products.
But I think that's where product development and improvement come in, right? Like we know now that this ingredient, that ingredient is not, so good for you anymore, and we have to limit it and stuff.
Yeah.
But and I think we're probably gonna have to wrap up soon. But I really, really, really am curious. You came here. Like I knew of you a little bit and we've talked like professionally, like in social setting, but you really good friend with Trust before you came into work at PLA. Mm-hmm. How is it working with your really good friend?
Not much different because we've worked together for so many years in so many different ways. So it's not actually much different. In fact, it's pretty like comfort zone for both of us at this point. It's so funny because Tress and I have a really good working relationship and we've always been very clear and very well understanding. Like we'll always say this. I say, this is work me talking to you right now. Or like, I'm talking to you as a friend right now. Yes. Right. Like we've always separated that. We also understand and respect our roles in a work environment are very different. Like there's things in my job that I can't talk to Tress about because I do have NDAs and I do have privacy things that it wouldn't even apply to her to know anyway. Yeah. So I don't talk to her about it. And she doesn't ask because she respects the boundary with work, right? And vice versa. I don't ask her things in her job because it's I don't care. But also I respect her job.
Yeah.
And then we'll also have friend conversations outside that are like, we'll talk about lives and we'll talk about our personal lives and we'll talk about, friend conversations.
I think that's one thing most people don't realize about PLA because, quote, Ashley, I just work here. Because Ashley say that a lot when people ask her for things. And she's like, oh, I just work here because Ashley would know everything there is about educations, but she'll know nothing about product development, which then you probably know nothing about what's going on with brand ambassadors. I mean, maybe you know a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so compartmentalized and each person are responsible for certain things. And though we hang with each other, we don't usually freely share a lot because there's a lot that tie into our job. Has that been kind of weird and difficult to sort of compartmentalize that?
I think it's weird and hard because the only reason that it's weird and hard is because I'm really excited. And I'm like, I want to tell everyone so bad what we're doing because it's so cool. But I don't and I can't. And it's also, I get overwhelmed pretty easily. And so when I think about like, if I tell her this, then I have to tell her this, and then I have to tell her this. And then I'm like, okay, nah, throw it all in the trash. I'm not doing any of it. I'm not even starting the conversation. So that's the hard part is because I get really excited and antsy and I want to tell the whole world, but I can't.
I do. I get on.
Yeah, you do. You do. And I'm like, can I?
Can I now? Absolutely. Yeah.
No.
Yes. Guys,
this is an ongoing fight that me and Michelle have.
No, because I did tell you, I think short up maliciously go like, hey, here's, everything. I think it's so fun and exciting to like share what we work on with our lash artist, and our lash artist can go like, yes, that's amazing, or like, hey, no. I think that's part of the reason why the Limitless line has been so successful is because we really got a lot of our lash artists involved and we listened to our feedback. Even the comparison tray that we did, Chris and Trust tray, we didn't launch that tray as the Limitless line. We took all the feedback and then include with your feedback and everything that you wanted the tray to be to make a tray that people haven't really seen before. So I'm really excited to like tell people all the things that we work on, and it'll come out regardless.
It's really fun to me because the things that we work on and the things that we think about is so unique. It is so different. Yeah. It's almost like being on, how do I even say that? It's almost like being on the edge of the cliff all the time. And like my adrenaline is so satisfied all the time because like who needs to be an adrenaline junkie when you get to be a product developer and like you get to do all of this.
And I actually think that's so cool that what you make, right? Like what you make, what you have your hands on, testing, deciding, making the label, like everything. Like at PLA, you don't just get a file from the manufacturers and fill in our logo. That's just not how we do it. Like we start everything from scratch. Like we look at the SDS and sometimes we go back and we say, we want this taken out and add this in. And we have the formulations for us. So sometimes we test like so many different ones and then we'll redesign, make all of the label for compliance, teach our team how to use it, and then go in for testing and then come back and adjust some more. So there's so many of that part because you doing it from scratch must feel like your little baby.
It is my little baby. I've been telling everybody, if you guys haven't seen my sticker, by the way, of Limitless, my ice cream man sticker, you guys, I shouted from the rooftops. I joked. That was a joke. Okay. That was like an 11 p.m. group chat joke that I was joking.
Can we pin a sticker, the ice cream man stickers,
okay,
like
we have
on
to
screen?
Add that on there. Oh my gosh. It was a total joke. And I ended up sending a really quick graphic to Michelle when I was joking about being the ice cream man to Limitless one night. And she's like, I'm fucking printing that. That's so cool.
So we print a bunch of them and now
10,000.
So now we have.
You printed 10,000. I thought she printed 500. Okay.
No.
I found out on a comment on Instagram that she posted that she created 10,000. But I think what people don't understand about PLA's products is that the type of sampling and testing that we do before we actually reach our end product,
it's crazy.
It's
insane.
It's like a minimum. I haven't seen one product go out that's had less than 8 months to a year of consistent testing and changing and modifying and engineering. Like, it's incredible the lengths that we go to with testing and the amount of samples. You guys should see my desk.
Yeah, you should see her desk or the samples room or my office or all
everywhere
of the things.
you look, there's samples and there's samples boxes and a bunch of different samples of the same product, or like so many versions. I started in the sample room. I started labeling in cubicles, sample version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4. And so like we can keep track of the versions and we can see the evolution of the products. But like, I've had to extend different cubicles because we have so many versions of the same product that we're continuing to evolve and change and modify the same sample so many times. And then it ends up being the product after.
So now that you do this, and, you know, obviously a badass work literally came in and I don't think people know this. You weren't hired when you start working on the Limitless line.
Yeah, I wasn't hired yet.
So like I totally like stole, you know, all of the brain cells from Erin. I flew Erin in just to like, hey, let's hang out, let's talk, let's whatnot. And then I gave her a bunch of samples. I'm like, here's a desk.
No,
here's
you
a
know
bunch
what
of
was
samples.
so messed up about that? Okay, I'll tell you guys what happened with that. I will tell you what happened because I've never told you this. I was low-key pissed because I was like, I didn't know that I was being flown in for like, not necessarily a working interview, but like, how do you mesh with the team? I'm just like kind of getting to know each other and hanging out, right? Okay, so she sets me down and she just throws like probably 50 tweezers. Yeah. Some of them were the same, some of them were different.
I gently set them down.
There was a pile in front of me, hands me a little notebook and goes, let me find you a pen. And she like finds a pen somewhere. She goes and sources a pen. Then she just goes, write down what you think about each of these tweezers. And I go, okay, great. I ended up noticing every difference with every tweezer. I sat there for like 2 hours and I put them all in order. I numbered them. I noticed every detail that was different. I wrote a page for every single tweezer, every detail about every tweezer. She comes over and goes, what do you think about the lashes? I was like, well, that's not what I was testing. That's not what you told me to test. And so it was totally like, it didn't end up being what I just had spent like 3 hours working on. And then that's how we came to the Limitless strips.
So like when I look at how you work, right? And then you wrote down all of the things and you notice like which tweezers is more flexible and which one has this curl and which one has this tension release and, you know, all of the things that you notice, it really tells me you have great attentions to detail because most people don't. Most people pick up a pair of tweezers and it's like, it works for me or it doesn't work for me and they don't really know how and why it doesn't work for me or what I like and what I don't like about it in great detail. Most people just say, I don't like it. Or most people say, I love it and I don't know. But if you ever drop your tweezers and you can't find another pair to replace it and you don't know why, that's because you don't really quite know what you love about that tweezers. But once you know intimate of like what your tweezer does and why does it work so awesome, you'll be able to find something that work very similar to that or adjust them so then it would work similar to that. That was when I was just like, okay, like she noticed everything. And then when we were talking about the lashes, you were just like, you know what? All of the lash artists really struggle making like 5, 6, 7, 8 millimeter, 9 millimeters. And we were talking about like strip, adhesive. And you don't really know if we can customize them because you were newer in product development. And you sort of just throwing the idea at me. And I'm like, oh yeah, we could do that. Yeah. Why did I think? I was so mad at myself. like I've been making lashes for 7 years. Why did I not think about making a smaller sticky strip for shorter lashes? Like, it's just common sense. But like nobody obviously thought about it. And, you know, you did. So then it comes with unlimited lashes. So I don't know if you already knew that you were going to be hired then, but in my head, that was when I was just like, okay, I think she is the right person for product development. Because I did product development for PLA and it was really hard to find someone who I like enough and have the attentions to detail enough where I was just like, yes, I think I'll give her the products and then she'll be able to tell all the things about it. It takes a really special skill, a really special person and very, very great attentions to details to actually notice the things that you do, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's why you're good at it. But yeah, no, she won't even hire yet. And then she did that work and I was just like...
No, and I was like, oh, well, yeah. And you'd want to know what? She didn't even give me a reaction. You guys, she goes, I said, look, I was like, and then she walked away.
That's my
She literally
face.
walked away. She was standing next to me and she goes, tell me about the lashes. First of all, I was like, okay, that's not, I have a whole notebook. Do you want to read my pages? Like, I just wrote like
tweezers?
this whole journal of tweezers and we didn't even look at them. To this day, I still have those pages.
No, you showed them to me.
Did I?
Yeah, you showed them to me and you touched me through the tweezers. And then we ended up grouping some of the tweezers.
Oh, yeah, later. Way later. Way later. Yeah, okay. So I ended up telling her, she goes, tell me about the lashes. And I was like, what if we did this? And I was like, what if we made a shorter sticky strip for shorter lashes? And she goes, uh-huh. Walks away. Walks away.
Do I really look like that?
Straight face.
That's just my processing face.
I was like, oh my God,
You
what did
like
I just
this
do?
bitch?
What did I just do? No, so you're like, I don't know if you knew that was the point that you got hired. No, I didn't know that was the point that I was getting hired because you walked away. You didn't even give me a look.
I really gotta work on my face. My mom always tell me, growing up, my mom's like, smile. And I'm like, what is there to smile about? And then my mom's like, if you don't smile, you look really mean. And then I never actually thought that. I never thought I have like resting.
I don't
like,
think that you
mean
do.
face.
Yeah.
And no, one time I was walking in front of my salon. I had a salon at that time, glass ceiling from like the door to like, floor to ceiling. Mm-hmm. And I walked by, I was on the phone and I caught a glimpse of myself like in the glasses. I looked pissed and I wasn't even angry. I was just talking. And then I start getting Botox and it got better. So
I literally tell my injector every time that I get my lip filler, my RBF is so bad, you guys. I promise I'm nice. I do. I'm so into it. People tell me all the time.
That on when I go to conferences,
we should listen. Anyway,
that would be hilarious.
Just like an I'm nice sticker. Please talk to me. I'm nice.
I'm like, my face.
I feel like I need to add like a little head bob, like a bobblehead cutout of me smiling just because my face is not smiling, but I do smile.
Watch me make you a bobblehead pin sticker.
10,000. 10,000 of them. No, my RBF, when it was so bad. People tell me all the time how intimidating I look. I literally go to my injector when I get my lip filler done and I say, please add a little lip filler on the outer corners so that I don't frown. So that I have a little smile. I literally do. It goes away in like 2 weeks, but I literally ask her like, please, like, fix this face.
No, I have to try that.
No, you don't have an RBF. Okay.
Oh, I do. Badly.
No, you have a thinking face.
Now that you know.
I learned that after I got over being like offended. I was like, okay, she hated that. She didn't want to tell me because she's too nice. She didn't want to tell me she hated that idea.
In my head, I was just like, Erin hired, but she didn't.
No, I panicked. My stomach fell out of my ass. Like, no. But so I have a question for you because you've been interviewing me blindly. Let's switch tables here. So what made you, like, how did you learn about manufacturing in that process?
Oh, I learned by trying. So at first, the very first group of lashes that we made for PLA was truly handmade. We had 5 lash artists that on their spare time, they would just make 5D handmade fan on a little sticky strip and then put them in. And then eventually I run into the problem of, number one, we didn't make enough. Number two, people were just like, oh, my fan is too wide. Oh, my fan is too narrow because there's 5 of them making it handmade. I have absolutely no control of like quality control, size, narrow fan, wide fan, medium fan. It was just sort of like, this box this person made was this, and this is what you get.
Yeah.
So then I know in order for me to scale it, we'll have to make commercialize it, where we have to have standard and mold and things like that. So when I went to Vietnam, I met up with a gal who has worked in eyelash extensions manufacturing for someone else for like 20 years. She now runs 2 of our manufacturers, and I talked to her and I say, hey, if I fund the money to open a manufacturers, would you come and work for me? And she said, absolutely. So then she came back and then she taught me some of the she came from like making eyelash tray, but not ProMate. But once you kind of know how eyelash like curling work and baking and temperatures, then everything else sort of kind of fall into place. And then we worked together and developed some of the first molds really is for eyelash extension for ProMate, like the wispy one, the camellia one, and kind of goes from there. So I learned a lot by falling on my face, and the amount of lashes that we trashed, the amount of lashes that we made and put so much work into was a little insane. Like ProMate 2.0, we were only able to ship 15% of our productions the first 6 months, which mean 85% of production went to trash. Like, and we couldn't even turn them into ProMate, regular ProMate, because the base, if we go back and glue them on, it would be too big and too bulky. So we had to throw away a lot of them. And I learned by really falling forward. Really.
But like the processes of manufacturing and like knowing this is the next connect to this, and this is the next thing that has to happen in line for this. Like, it is not common sense. And it is a long string of things to learn with manufacturing and things like orders of operations, if you will.
Yeah. So if you came to PLA about, I say 3 years earlier, there's no SOP in PLA, which stand for standard operation. Procedures. Like we don't do any SOP. Everything that I knew was by learning, and then it's in my brain, and then it's terrible because then everyone has to kind of learn it, and it's really messy, and I'm exceptionally unorganized. I'm very, very unorganized. But once Jeff came into the pictures, he really helped us building in system. When it comes to product development, it works a lot of the same way. We test things out, and then if it doesn't work, we just don't write that into our SOP, and then we'll try a different way of baking them. A lot of product development is common sense, though. It is not to the people who've never worked in there, but for people that worked in product development, we'll be like, okay, we can't roll them that way, or we tried them and that didn't work, or okay, we have to be able to apply the adhesive so it doesn't wick down, and this is all of the step that we would do. But we do, I think mostly because I don't have manufacturing experience, or I didn't, we ended up actually able to use very little of what we first learned how to make. And I baked that into product development costs, really. And I think if I was someone who like really have manufacturing background and, worked for someone before and then came into this, I think it would be a little bit easier. But it's okay because we've made it work this far. And I feel like we built a pretty good foundations of it. Again, lash industry is really, really, really new. It's not, especially ProMate, it's only been around for 7 years.
Yeah, it's not been long at all.
It hasn't been around for all that long.
Especially not laid out on strips.
Yeah. So because of that, because all of this is new, I think we kind of writing the book on how to do it. Yeah. But it's mostly common sense, I would say.
So one of the things that I find the most interesting about you and about the manufacturing process and how PLA does things, we white label or private label, for other brands, but you are so open with like education around the manufacturing processes. What do you feel like is, for anybody that is a brander, is a manufacturing out there, what do you feel like is like the biggest, not commonly said lesson that you've learned about manufacturing, about innovation, about patents, about anything?
I would probably say in our industry, patents are not taken all that serious until it's being enforced. I would share this. I normally don't share, sales and numbers because it really kind of varies. But I would say the first time I really, really, really invested heavily on something else besides just product development was when I invested in the patent of the ProMate 2.0. It was a patent that I wasn't quite sure I'm going to be able to get, even though I know the product didn't exist. And when they gave me a roughly number of like how much I would spend on patent, I was just like, whoa, that's a lot of money. And, people may knock me off like anyway, because let's be real, I was the first one to make the wispy lashes, and they knocked that off real quick, and then the Camilla lashes, and then the double, and you don't even want to get me started. Anyway, so then when I did the ProMate 2.0, I was just like, no, I want to patent this because we put so much work into it, and I've seen my products knocked off like after, I think record time was 7 weeks. Like
wow.
one of the wispy one that we released, the competitor came out with it 7 weeks later.
Wow.
The same exactly. Like didn't even change the diameter. Didn't even change the order of the wispy fan that I make. And I was just like, you know, so for the first time I said, I'm going to invest this money in. And at first, a lot of people in our company were just like, Michelle, are you sure this is a lot of money? And then I'm happy to report it has really, really paid off. I say ProMate 2.0 right now is our #1 private label items, and also probably one of our best-selling items at PLA's too. And it's starting to pay off for all of the patents that I pay, because patents are not cheap. They're really expensive to file and then to get, and then even more expensive to defend, because if someone,
Because you have to. It's your obligation.
Oh yeah, you have to do it. And it's so funny because then sometimes I've had a friend, a work friend, and he was so kind. He sent me an email and it's like, hey, Michelle, I just want to let you know I got this email from like a manufacturers, and he wrote out like a whole beautiful stories about how they developed ProMate 2.0 and how they, put so much.
They were trying to sell you on the 2.0?
No, they were trying to sell my friend on ProMate 2.0.
Oh, they forwarded it to you.
Yeah, but we've already in business together and we've already talked, and he was just like, hey, Michelle, I'm sending this to you. And I'm like, dang, even the stories are getting more and more convincing. So obviously we have to like send cease and desist letter. And so far, thank God, so far it has been okay, enforcing them, and most like 99% of the time they take it down without any further issue. And they may try to sell it like sneakily, but yeah, no, so far it has been pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool about PLA is like PLA in my mind, and maybe it's my bias because of the department that I'm primarily my principal chief department, but I look at PLA now. You asked me what I thought about PLA at first.
She said cheap. Let me remind you.
I'm never going to live that down. I did. I think now the way that I look at the PLA as a brand, though, with what I know about, the history and the gestation that happened for every product and the manufacturing and the purpose that you even made the 3 manufacturers in Vietnam. Like, a lot of people don't know that story, but I digress. A lot of what I look at PLA now is I look at PLA as a brand that is an innovation brand.
Yeah.
That
I think that's
happens to be in the lash industry.
I actually also think that's true. We say this often to people that come join us from the lash industry, like as lash artists. We say PLA is actually a corporation. We just happen to sell lashes and happen to have a CEO, founder that are a lash artist, and we're in the lash industry, but we functions a lot like a corporations, and we are very heavily invested in innovations. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that PLA is, I can easily say, the most corporate lash business.
You think?
Are you kidding me? You know that. Yes, huh?
No, I could think about like maybe a couple others where they structures-ish. I think we structure-ish.
We're very structured. We're very structured. And not many lash brands have an HR department.
That's true.
And I feel like once you hit an HR department, you are officially a corporate business.
So it was either Corinne or my husband. What, like 2 years ago.
We love Fong. Yeah. We love him. Corinne is better in that role.
Yeah. No, 2 years ago, I didn't know what HR was. So I told Caitlin was just like, we're getting to the size we need HR. And I said, oh, my husband could be HR. And then Corinne's like, not your husband. He can't be HR. And then we actually have real HR, and Corinne's amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, I love being a part of a inventing brand, an innovative brand that just happens to be in the lash industry. And I feel really blessed.
Yeah.
Every day. I think I pinch myself every day. I have this conversation with my mom probably on an bi-daily basis. Every other day basis, where I'm just like, how did I end up here? Like, how did I get chosen? How did I feel so have pinch me moments every single day.
You tested out 50 tweezers. That's how you get here. But also,
I wrote a book. I wrote a book on tweezers. That's how I got this job.
No, I'm so grateful to have you. And I think, PLA is going to grow really far with your help. But if you have to give, to wrap up this conversations, if you going to give lash artists that's sitting behind the chairs, like if they ever want to get out to do something else, and use their lashing skills to do something else, whether with a lash brand or whether it's with a manufacturers or open their own brand or whatnot, what would you, or come and work for a lash brand, what would you recommend? Would you highly recommend that? Or would you
I'm glad that you just said that, because my answer would have been, think really long and hard about doing that. I mean, Michelle is very modest and she doesn't talk about prices. She doesn't talk about, the logistics that go into the behind the scenes. There is so much discarding. There is so much things that it's so much more expensive. There's so much more time and effort that goes into being a brand and selling product than what a lot of people think that it is. You can't you can, and a lot of people do, with a whole lot of integrity and a whole lot of backstory and being able to build a brand behind white labeled product is really hard to do without knowing your raw materials and knowing, what's being put into that product. If you want to do it though, and you really are, you've done your due diligence, you really have thought long and hard about it, and you still come to the conclusion that you really still want to do it, I would say do your homework. And do your homework really well. Learn skills that you probably hate. And that's kind of a weird piece of advice. But if you hate reading case law, you hate reading globally compliant information, for example, get used to doing it. And push yourself into those limits that you're like, I really hate doing this, but it's important and it's necessary. Eventually you can hand that off to the next person. But one thing that I really have learned from you and what you have consistently said is like, you don't like having one person in your company knowing how to do anything. And so when it becomes a brand, you're going to have to scale in order to continue selling more. Eventually you're going to have to hire people. You can't just do it all on your own.
No. You can't.
At the beginning, you can. At the beginning, you can do your garage phase, which you did. PLA was in the garage phase for a hot minute. But eventually, if you're going to scale your sales, you're going to have to scale your team as well. And being able to be a leader to a company is a lot different skill set than just being like, oh, I'm a lash artist. I really like product. I really have these good ideas with product. Yeah. You're going to learn skills. You're going to have to learn skills that maybe you're going to learn quickly or not your strongest. Yeah. Your strongest
and
positions.
Growing is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. Sometimes I would just like, can I hide in a room? Can Jeff have this conversation for me? But
and talk to your doctor about medication for stress.
I was just like, well,
because it's stressful.
This is how a lot of my friends drink, and I'm gonna start. But
no, you're not. You are not.
Maybe. Would you recommend working for a brand if they are a lash artist and they find a brand that they align with? Would you recommend working for a brand versus like working for yourself?
Yes,
you can be honest.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I would say not a lot of people are cut out to be employees. I think that a lot of people choose to take the route of working for a brand because they are having a hard time scaling their lash business, or they don't know what's next for them and they're bored, or their creative fountain of how to scale their own business has kind of run dry, and so they're like, well, obviously my next step is to work for a brand. And I would say that not everyone, a lot of people that I've had this conversation with, because I've had this conversation many times of like, how did you, like, you got to a certain level with MLC, and like, for anyone that doesn't know, I created an online academy that's reached 65 countries. Like, my scalability was infinite with that. And a lot of people are like, why would you give that up to go work for a brand? Or how did you come to that position?
Sell your soul?
Yeah, like how did you come to that? Because I think from a lot of people's perspective, they looked at MLC as like a really successful brand. And it is. And so a lot of people are like, why would you start working for another brand, right? I think that there comes a time that you really have to get real with yourself of like, are you choosing to work for a brand because you're tired or lazy? and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but have you reached a point that you're just like, I'm so burnt out, I don't have the energy anymore to continue doing this on my own. So you're going to default to working for a brand, A. Or B, do you hate being behind the bed? Do you hate lashing? So now you want the easy way out to go work for a company because it sounds easier to be a W-2 for a company rather than being your own boss and having all of that weight on your shoulders. And I always tell everybody, please do not become an educator. Do not work for another brand. Don't even think about partnering as a brand ambassador for another brand if you hate lashing. Like, you should never scale or choose to move up, because I think a lot of people think that when you become a W-2 and you work for a brand, it's easier and it's less about lashes.
It is
not. And this is the most neck deep in the lash industry I have ever been in my career. And if I started working here because I hated lashes,
you would be in trouble.
I would hate my life even more than when I was doing lashes, right?
You would be in trouble.
So you kind of have to have I think that a lot of, as a self-employed person, dare I say entrepreneur, if you want to be, self-employed and run your own brand and run your own business, self-actualizing is one of the best skills that you can have, is really knowing how to self-reflect, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, and really thinking about, why am I choosing to make this decision?
Yeah.
And so working for a brand, if they align with you, and if you're doing it for the reasons that is actually going to make sense for both you and the brand, not just a self-serving. I think that's the other layer to this. A lot of people look at partnering with brands because they are like, this will get me farther. This will, I'll gain more following. I'll be able to do XYZ off that brand's back. And that is never how I've looked at partnering with a brand.
No, yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that coming to work for a brand has become a part of a bigger team, right? Being a part of something else and building something bigger than what you were building. And I have to say, I am so grateful that you came and tested those 50 tweezers and pick up your life and move here to PLA and bring Mr. Maverick with you, who's adorable. And I cannot wait to see what else you are working on, because I know you're working on a couple pretty big projects.
I don't know. Are we?
Yeah, just the one that you're going to talk to about on Thursday. I'm excited about that one. So and that one you and Loretta almost solely work on. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, we have some really big projects coming up.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for allowing me to be in this position. And thank you for bringing me onto PLA.
And then I kidnap you.
I tell you that every other day. I'm just like, Michelle, I'll never stop saying thank you. But I love it here, and I'm really excited for what's to come with PLA.
Yeah. And to our listener, thank you so much for watching our episode with Erin. I can't wait to see what's next for you. And if you have not subscribe so then you can see us talking to our next guest. Have a great day. I don't know. That was weird.